The team Premier Dominic Perrottet is taking to the vote looks quite different to the one he inherited following Gladys Berejiklian's resignation. Premier Perrottet defeated the only other contender for the role, then Planning Minister Rob Stokes. A bit over a year ago, he wanted to lead his state, but now Mr Stokes is pulling the pin on politics. I caught up with him a short time ago and began by asking him why he's decided to go.
Oh, look, the arrangement I had with my family was this term was either up or out, and so had a go at going for the big role. That wasn't to be. It was emphatic victory for my friend Dom Perrottet, and so it's appropriate for me to bow out at the first appropriate opportunity, which is at a general election.
So obviously it hasn't been all smooth sailing for Dom Perrottet. It's pretty hard, I guess, after 12 years as well. What do you think of his prospects, and do you think this Nazi uniform business will hurt him?
Look, the first thing, I think he's got great prospects. He comes in as the underdog, but I know Dom well, and he fights best when his back's against the wall. He is a fighter. He's not good in defence. He's much better in offence. He loves being a big target with big ideas and a big vision for the future of the state. And one of the challenges about being a big and colourful personality is you're going to have a past, and sometimes elements of that past will come up and bite you, and that's what happened to Dom. I felt he dealt with it appropriately. I spoke to him personally. He was really gutted about it, and you know, his apology was very genuine, and I think you know, we can all move on now.
Did he explain it at all? I don't want to spend too long on this, but I will just ask, did he say, oh look, it was just a joke, I didn't mean any offence or anything of that nature?
No, he didn't say anything privately to me that he hasn't said publicly, which was just a profound apology that he was deeply embarrassed. He didn't seek to offer any excuses.
Now, I want to ask you about the cashless gaming card. It seems to already be a pretty big part of this campaign. I believe you're an advocate. Why do you feel so passionately about it? And can it actually work? Because it looks pretty a big undertaking to implement it.
It is a big undertaking to implement it, but all big policy reforms are. We have to be bold, and I've seen through my political career some of the hardest things to do are some of the most important things you can do. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the container deposit scheme, everyone said that couldn't be done, it'd be the end of the world as we know it. Now what we found is once New South Wales introduced a container deposit scheme, Queensland, Victoria, now we've got one across the east coast of Australia. I feel it will be very much the same in relation to cashless gaming. This is a scourge on our communities. I see its damage in my community, but what really I think is something that needs to be part of this debate is the communities that are really being hit hardest by the damage that problem gambling causes are those that can least afford it. And so I think you know, public life is all about trying to make a difference to make this country fairer and freer, and the freer we can be as a government from dependence on gambling revenue, and the freer that families and communities can be from the scourge of problem gambling, the better a country it'll be.
In power for 12 years, though, has this not gone to Cabinet before? Has this not come up for serious consideration? Why hasn't it been done before if it's such an important thing for people in your government, including you?
Andrew, I think the answer is because it's been such a hard thing to do. You know, we've done a huge number of reforms, and this was the next big one, and it was always the one that was there to be done. We've done a huge amount of reform. You obviously can't do everything all at once. It's very appropriate that we take to the election the positions that we believe will create a better and fairer and freer state for everybody. So, you know, we're willing to be held to account at an election for our views and our values, and that's precisely what we're doing.
It seems Chris Minns is likely to push forward if he was elected with more development than the government has supported. As Planning Minister until recently, what's your take on that?
Oh, Well, he said nothing concrete or delivered nothing concrete. I mean, his actual position is unintelligible, because at one level he says there won't be any privatisation of government assets, but then on the other hand he's saying but government land being sold off at metros will be used for higher density development. So I don't actually understand what his position is. Either he doesn't support the sell-off of public land, or he does support using public land for housing developments near metro stations. Which is it?
Isn't more development one of the main ways to address housing affordability, though?
Sure, and that's a fundamental thing that we have to do. But it's not just more development per se. It needs to be well designed. It needs to be accessible to great public transport. It needs to be delivered for different markets. One of the things that we've been pushing is we do need more high density development near railway stations, but that by itself is not enough. We also need to balance that with access to affordable housing for key workers in cities, people who, the cleaners, people who make coffees, all those sorts of things that are important to make a city run. It's not good enough for housing to be on the fringe for those sorts of people, and it does need to operate at some sort of subsidy, which is why, as Transport Minister, I backed in the changes to the Transport Assets Holding Entity so that 30% of all developments of land of land that they own will be used for diverse and affordable housing.
You once advocated for an end or at least changes to negative gearing. Do you believe that's still something government should look at reforming?
Well, there are things that state governments can do, and certainly supply of different products to different markets is a big part of that. But there's also tax reform elements here, I have always believed and continue to believe that our tax system, the Australian tax system, should definitely help everyone to buy their own home, but then before we look to help people buy a second, a third, a fourth home, let's make sure that our tax system supports everyone to buy one before we start supporting people to buy multiple homes. That to me is just a basic tenet of fairness, I would have thought.
So you'd like to see, it's not in your purview, it's in a different sphere of government. You'd like to see changes to negative gearing.
Well, the thing, Andrew, you've said it there. I don't want to be one of these politicians who tells others what they should do. I want to be judged on what I can do, and that's why I've been supporting affordable and diverse housing targets in relation to land holdings that are within my portfolio responsibilities. But I certainly would encourage the federal government to look at all the levers at their disposal, including negative gearing, to see what they can do to support the development of more diverse housing opportunities and more supply. One of those would be negative gearing. Another would be the withholding tax treatment in relation to managed investment funds, so that we can have more build-to-rent style developments that are enormously important in jurisdictions like the US and the UK in making sure that there's suitable access to diverse housing for everybody.
And as the Liberal Party struggles a bit with the issue of your traditional voters, I suppose, you've got to keep the outer suburbs or win the outer suburbs, but you've also got to look after electors in seats like yours, Pittwater, who are going to the Teals, and it's previously been independent, of course, before you were a member. What do you think the answer is here for the modern Liberal Party?
I think the answer is found in the musings of our founder, Sir Robert Menzies, which he talked about this concept. I know it's hackneyed now, but it was quite revolutionary when he talked about it, the broad church, the idea that we need to speak to a broad constituency, but fundamentally that includes what I call the people who are forgotten. He was very clear that big business is powerful enough to look after itself, and the trade unions look after their membership. We need to look after everyone else in the middle. Those who don't have a voice strong enough to speak up for themselves. That's small business, that's professionals, that's retirees, that's students, that's everyone who doesn't have a powerful lobby group to look after their cause. And so by its nature, our breadth means we're going to be democratic. Being democratic means that there's going to be a level of messiness to our processes, because they're going to be a bit chaotic because people have their say. What I would really urge the party not to do is what we saw happen at the federal election, which is try to stitch up pre-selections and these sorts of things. Instead, have a fully democratic process so people have a choice. Sure, that's going to be a bit messy, but giving people a choice is always the best way.
Just a couple of quick questions left. What is your view of The Voice and how the federal Liberals and Peter Dutton are handling this idea, this concept?
It's a really tricky one because it's something that we need to, as a country, be united on. But the challenge with being united on is we need to understand what we're uniting behind. So I do personally, I support the idea of an Indigenous voice very, very strongly. But personally, I also think it's important to understand the details of what we're actually supporting. And I think that's a reasonable thing to ask.
And just finally, do you have any regrets from your time in politics?
Look, you can't afford to have regrets. There are you learn from your mistakes, and I've made plenty of them on the way through. But ultimately, it's up to others to judge my performance. I'm just excited to have been part of an amazing team to support great premiers like Mike Baird, like Gladys Berejiklian, and now Dom Perrottet. They have been visionary leaders. I've learnt a lot from them, and it's been a privilege to support them.
Rob Stokes, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.